2025 Great Reset. What is the Great Reset, or what I think is going to happen in 2025? Well, what I think is really going to happen in 2025 is that the market, especially the housing market, is going to have a reset just because of the few indication I see. And I'll go over them with y'all today. Well, let's look at this. Why do I think there's going to be a great reset in the housing market and job markets and everything else like that? Well, first thing first, the reason why I think it is because the housing market, rental market especially, dropped by 2% or 0.2% after the pandemic. So the prices of renting out your property isn't going up. And that's going to be a big factor for everyone that's trying to get into the rental market, because people rely on the increases to make ends meet. So if the rental is going down, some of these people who are barely making any money on these mortgages will end up being a negative. And since they're going to be in a negative, they're going to have another issue. Other issue that I am seeing now about the housing market is wages. Wages are not keeping up with the housing market. So the cost of homes in the United States has been outpaced wage growth over the past decade. And I think now is going to be taking effect. Essentially, home prices went up 74%, while the average wage only went up 54 during the same time. So there's a significant difference between wage and home prices. So with the big difference in these prices, I think it's going to end up causing a gap in home purchases, a gap in investing, because you can't afford to buy a house. With the increase in the gap between buying a house and your wage, because it is a percentage of your income. Right now, I believe if you want to afford a house, the average person is going to cost 36% of your income. Now, 36% doesn't sound bad, but that's not including any other bills. That's just your mortgages, which I think is going to cause the issue. Now, the other issue I'm seeing that is going to cause the effect is investors in the market. With renter investor own 11% of homes in the United States, up to 9% in the past. However, the large investor owns less than 1% of homes. Small still owns the majority. Now, if you look at this number, here's some of the stats. In Texas, in early 2023, investor owns 31% of the housing market. And with mortgage rates being so high, I think it's going to cause us an issue, because they can't flip houses, they can't invest in houses, and no one's buying houses. So if you're trying to flip a house right now and there's a decrease in the market, which might not be in all areas, but in Houston area, I have noticed that the housing prices are starting to go down. With the houses prices starting to go down, interest rates still not going down, it's going to cause these investors to be in the negative. Now, if you're a good investor, you have another plan, but a lot of these investors don't. Now, the other issue is they're going to try to tap into the rental market. And the rental market is very, best way to say, closed by the corporations if you're trying to beat them. Because if you didn't know that most home buyers, investors, as December 2023, investors own almost 29% of the homes in the United States. Now, why is that important? Because that's a third of the people that are bidding on houses. So with the lack of people bidding on houses, because that's a third of it, it leaves it better for first time home buyers. Now first time home buyers are gonna be able to pick the premium or the better houses and leave the fixer upper on the market longer. Which, if these fixer ups gonna be on the market longer, it's gonna hurt these investors. So unless you upgrade it to sell, which might cause you being a negative. So if the other issues that people do not understand is the corporations are buying houses, and they only buy houses in a certain range. They only buy houses less than 300,000. Why do they do that? Because they want to be able to charge rent, and they understand that majority of people cannot afford a $4,000 mortgage or $4,000 rent. So if they can't afford $4,000 according to their numbers, because it has to be a certain percent of your take-home pay, or they will not rent to you. If you ever rented out an apartment, they say, hey, how much money do you take home? Because they want to make sure you can afford rent. And we can look, they want you to have 1/3 of your take home pay to go to your rent. So most places want either 4 times the mortgage for your annual income or 3 times. I kind of lean towards the 4 times, but not everyone can do that. And if you think about that, and you're charging $2,000 a month, that's $8,000 a month someone has to make to be able to afford your house or your apartment. Now let's think about it as 3 times. That's $6,000, and that is $72,000 a year. Now the average income a year is not $72,000. It's 56,000 a year, or around that range. So if you have income now not matching the requirement, they're not gonna be able to rent out those apartments. They're not gonna be able to rent out the houses. So for me, the one thing I looked at whenever I was buying rental houses was, hey, how much can people afford to pay for rental properties? Now I could go buy a $1 million property, but how am I gonna be able to rent it out? Because how many people's gonna afford a $20,000 mortgage a month? I don't know if the $1 million real estate costs you 20,000, but we can throw the number on the screen. And that is how much they're gonna have to make a month. And if you had to do it times 3 or times 4, they're not gonna be able to afford it. And this is the average person. So your house is gonna sit on the market longer. Another thing is, you're gonna start seeing houses sit on the market longer, which means it's bad for investors. People are trying to flip these houses. And if people are trying to flip houses in this market, I'm gonna pretty much say it's not gonna be the best thing, because there's no one buying houses. And I can show you off of Zillow. And so we're looking up this in Houston, Texas, and we're noticing price cut, price cut. And we're gonna see how long these been on the market. This has been a price cut, and before the COVID and everything else, we wouldn't see as many price cut. It was actually a bidding war, and we started to notice that the market is going down. So we're gonna have a reset. It's gonna be a good thing for a lot of people, because these houses are starting to drop in prices, meaning that people wages can start catching up to the home prices. And some of these houses, you know, are still pretty cheap in Houston, Texas. Now, these might be in the ghettos, wherever you want to call it, but the main thing is we're looking at home prices drops. I'm not looking at the prices that they're listing for, I'm looking at the trend. I clicked on 3 of them, and the trend is showing that the home prices are dropping. And let's look at more expensive houses and a price cut of 60,000 on this one. And I'm just randomly clicking on houses. Price cut, price cut. This one's been freshly painted. And let's see what happened. Let's see. Well, that had an increase. But has it sold? No. It looks like this might have been a fixer-upper. They done everything, fresh paint, renovation. So this one, maybe it's the odd one out of all the ones I clicked on. But on average, well, this one's a price cut. And price cut with a pool. Price cut. Let's look at this one. And you're noticing another price cut. So on average, you're starting to see more and more people put the houses on the market, and there being a price cut. So with all these price cuts, meaning no one's buying houses. If no one's buying houses, and the news are stating that people aren't, the job market isn't as strong as it was before. And what do I mean by the job market? If you look up on the news right now, the average person is starting up on the news right now. You'll see that, companies aren't having a bidding war for these people because there's actually more people going onto the market due to so many layoffs. So you have not mass layoffs, you have a lot of layoffs in 2024. You have home prices dropping. You have wages stagnating. And you have investors starting to lose money on houses. I'm not saying it's a recession. I think it's going to be a reset on the market. And stock market is still doing decent, but everything else is pretty much taking a hit in 2024, and it's going to affect 2025. No matter who is president, it's going to have an effect because we had a nice bull run for a long time, and it has just outpaced wages. So if wages can't keep up, guess what's going to happen? We're going to have to reset the market, and so that people can afford houses again. So people can afford to go out again. Because grocery bills, if you look up right here, grocery bills went up. So the average grocery bills went up 2.4%. That's pretty high increase. And if you look at the market on food inflation, 10%, 7%, and it's 2.6%, and 2021 is 3.8%. And this is in January. So if we have food increasing that much, wages not increasing as fast, it's going to cause us to have to look at the market again. Because if no one can afford to live, that means inflation on food, housing, and everything else increase too much. And the main corporate or the main person that's corporate of that is corporation buying houses and taking 1/3 of the market. So if BlackRock is taking 1/3 of the market, or investor corporations taking 1/3 of the market, housing market, and the thing about it, they say it's 1/3, but they don't specifically tell you that it's 1/3 of the market overall, but majority of their purchases is in affordable housing range. Which now, if you think about it, they might own more than 1/3 in the affordable housing because they own 1/3 overall, investor wise, in the rental market. So guess what happened? They might actually own 2/3 or of the affordable housing range under 300,000. And that means the people can't afford houses. So these are the reason why I think they're going to be a great reset and the evidence behind it, because all these things are showing, hey, people can't afford to live and affordability is out the window just because the housing market is out of reach because the wage hasn't kept up. The increase in food price, the decrease in rent, causing investor problems. All these things are going to cause a reset. So if you don't think it's going to be cause a reset, please let me know, comment below, and like, subscribe to my video. That's all I got for you. I think there's going to be a great reset, and these are my reasons.